Ever wonder what it would be like to grow up getting a chance to hang out in the White Sox clubhouse or around legends like Frank Thomas or Carlton Fisk? We can find out what it was like with my guest next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Turn on those notifications. Also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, so I'm on vacation. But before I took off for my trip, I recorded a series of interviews diving into the Sox fandom world. And the fourth part of the series explores how Ozzie Guillen Jr. grew up around the Sox with his dad, Ozzie Guillen, being an all-star for the club. The interview was so good, and Ozzie Guillen Jr. had so many stories that today is actually just part one of the conversation I had. Also, this was recorded before the trade deadline was completed, the 21-game losing streak, and the firing of Pedro Grifol. So if there is mentions of Grifol, I left it in there based on Ozzie Guillen Sr. having that great viral moment recently, talking about how he couldn't believe the previous GM hired Pedro over Ozzie. So otherwise, without further ado, let's get to my conversation, part one with Ozzie Guillen Jr. All right, thanks for joining me, Ozzie. And I just got the first question. What was it like growing up around the White Sox?
Growing up around the White Sox as a kid or as a
kid?
As a young adult? As a kid, it was amazing. I always say that my favorite team and the team that is the team of my life and my love is the Chicago White Sox from 1986, 87 till 1997. Just because it was innocent to me. Those guys were my heroes. I think I asked Carlton Fisk every day for an autograph, not knowing who he really was in the game of baseball and what his autograph really meant at the time. But it was just awesome. It was just, to us, it was just fun. And Ozzie was very fortunate to have a lot of really cool managers at the time, which allowed kids to be around. They were very family orientated, but it was amazing. It was amazing. I think those relationships that I created, again, as a kid being around, then got a lot bigger as they got older. But it was awesome in the clubhouse, awesome being around like the stadium. I thought that was just normal. It never got weird at like school or anything that way. This is obviously pre-social media time. I think my friends and the schools that I went to were always the same ones. So to the kids and to the parents, it was just Ozzie and Ozzie Jr. and it was just kind of normal. So it wasn't anything different. I didn't know anything different of it. So it wasn't anything that I was different than everybody else. I just got to go to a lot of White Sox games.
All right, what about it, though, as a young adult? Because I know you and I have kind of messaged back and forth. It kind of changed, didn't it?
Oh, hell yeah, it changed. Well, first of all, when we came back to Chicago, I've always wanted to come back to Chicago eventually because this was home. And at the time I was in college. I was like my third year in college. So this whole thing, this notion that the media and the White Sox fans always say Ozzie's kids and these kids that were around, they act like we were like 12 or 14 years old. Like we were grown. We were already in college. I was 21, like a year after Ozzie managing. It was amazing. A lot of partying, a lot of good times. Obviously, when you're of age and you're in a team, a lot of young players, you get to hang out with them, you become friends with them, you're going out with them. Same thing with the guys around the league. Your friends that are making it to the show at that time. So for me, it was a blast. I was in college. I started working for the team as a translator. I was 21 years old at the time. So I was broadcasting before I was 25. So it was just awesome. I think looking back at it, I probably took a lot of it for granted. Like it was just a special time and moment of the age that I had. And again, going back to that first question you asked, a lot of my friends that were here, that I grew up with, I didn't come to Chicago and look, for a whole new set of friends. A lot of people were like, these guys are, it's still on Twitter, like, oh my God, these guys are they really Chicago? It's like, I went to grade school in Bridgeport. I lived in Berwyn, went to middle school in Burr Ridge. Like, yes, we are Chicago before, Chicago and the surrounding areas. It was awesome. I could not, it was perfect timing. And I moved back here because I didn't know how long Ozzie would manage. I was like, Chicago's a great place, great schools. Obviously fell in love with downtown. No better city than in the summer with Chicago. And I took advantage of it. I was, going to college, club promoter, worked with the team. It was a fun time being 20 around baseball. And it was fun. It was like, I was working for the team, and it was like I was a big leaguer without being in the big leagues. I didn't have to play or get an at bat. I'd always tell players, I can do it hard. I don't play. You guys do.
Yeah.
When we were and for that team, a lot of the guys, when we got there, a lot of the guys were not married yet. They were either had just met their girlfriends, just gotten engaged, had no kids. So we saw that whole process, just like, us, my wife now, girlfriend at the time, like just progression. But it was cool. It was really, really, really awesome. It was a really, really good time to be around. And again, pre-social media time. And Chicago's a great place, but it was awesome. I just thought that it was always really funny when they would say Ozzie's kids and Ozzie's kids this. And it's like, we're not 12. The only one that was underage was my youngest brother, Osney. He was probably like 14, 15 at the time. He was the one that was a bad boy. But we were, I guess, young men, you should say. But we knew. But it was awesome. I took full advantage of it. I think that's how I gained all my weight, because I was just eating and drinking and having a good time. It was a good time in Chicago all around.
So I take it you did not sleep for a while after in October of 2005.
Oh man, 2005, it went to like, you know what? Regardless of winning or losing, I think I had fun in every single season. One of my favorite seasons, I was actually just talking to Magler Ordonez. I was with him in Cancun for the league meetings for the team that I advise in Venezuela. He owns a team. He was with us in 2004. And 2004 was probably one of the coolest years ever. And at the time, it was because Frank was with us, and I've known Frank forever, Maglio, Esteban Loaiza, Carlos Lee, a really fun group of guys. And it was brand new to me. I had never been to a club, and they just kind of like, oh, baseball. Like, Ozzie was a coach with the Marlins, was a little different than coaching than the manager world. So it was different, and it was fun. So every year, I think, if you were going to talk about having fun, I think every year was a World Series year. 2005, though, changed it. Like 2004 was like, people kind of like, they would know eventually who we were, but not really. After 2005, for better or for worse, people definitely knew who we were. And again, but I always had my friends around, the same group of people, but it was fun. It was a lot of free meals and a lot of free drinks.
So going back to when you were a kid, who was one of your favorite players to be around besides, like, say, Carlton Fisk?
Well, it's a funny story. So my aunt, my mom's sister, Darlene, is married to Scott Radinsky.
Okay.
Lefty pitcher of the Chicago White Sox.
So
and
Bobby Thinkpen.
Correct. And yeah, and we asked them, the reason that they started like kind of talking was at a water park. We were very comfortable around Scott. And we were like, how did you guys? And he told us a story that we used to just go to his clubhouse. He was really cool. I guess he was one of the nicest guys in the clubhouse with like the kids. Obviously, he was probably the youngest guy on the team. And he let us take his glove, kind of like just do everything. So that connection eventually led to, at that water park, him and my aunt. Obviously, my aunt was like our babysitter, but yeah, I would say my uncle Scott Radinsky, obviously still in my family today. But other than Scott, Ozzie had a really good relationship until this day. He's one of our dear friends, Harold Baines. It was very normal having Bainesy around. Ron Karkovice, obviously, Darryl Boston. There was a player early on. He didn't play very long for the White Sox, but Ozzie had a really good relationship with him and his families. Gary Reedus and the Hairston's. Yep. That's obviously pre-1990s. The Fletchers, obviously the Walkers. Again, everyone in the game. But I would say in that time, I would say Scott Radinsky and obviously Harold Baines.
All right, quick timeout here to take a quick break, but more with Ozzie Guillen Jr. takes place next on Locked On White Sox. All right, so the only way I can get my daughter and wife to go to a ball game is if I buy them that ice cream of the future they love so much. But sometimes they still get thirsty, and next time I'm going to suggest Liquid IV. When taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's popsicle firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the number one powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. I'm in Florida right now, so you best believe I packed some Liquid IV to stay hydrated. Blast off with the iconic summer flavor of popsicle firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off the first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. PrizePicks is America's number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. And if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. I always tell you about my buddy who lives behind the cheddar curtain. He always is telling me how much he loves PrizePicks is available that way, in the cheddar in Wisconsin. That way he can get his selections in. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox finish a 3-game home series tonight with the New York Yankees. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And let's jump back into my conversation with Ozzie Guillen Jr. Dude, you're talking about the guys that I grew up watching, because I grew up watching that. I mean, one of my first conscious memories was the 88-89 team. My dad started taking me to games in 89, and I believe I got to shake your dad's hand when they had I think it was the Boston Red Sox. They had, you could walk the field and shake the players' hands day. And I remember just being like, that this is amazing. But did you actually, when did you finally realize, oh my God, my dad's a Major League Baseball player and is a pretty much a celebrity in the city of Chicago, because he was beloved before he became the manager. He was a great.
I think probably the last year of Old Comiskey Park to New Comiskey Park. I think New Comiskey Park, I already had the knowledge of okay, my dad's not the same as everybody else, meaning what he does for work. I was a little bit more self-aware, and not so much for Chicago. I think because of Venezuela at the time, we in Chicago was just a lot less than it was in Venezuela. Venezuela was a lot crazier, but I think that was Dad's work. And my parents were very avid that my mom was, that we watched the games, that we watched what our father did. For us, I said New Comiskey. I said the New Comiskey Park, or the new stadium, because right now where the scout seats are located, okay, before there was no scout seats. So we had season tickets row 3, I believe, right behind home plate. And it was a known thing that we would either heckle you or clap for you when you were the opposing team. And we would get a kick out of getting players acknowledging us on the other team. That was our thing. So again, I think that's why we're so obsessed with baseball. So we got, we're growing up watching Jim Thome, Albert Bell, just amazing teams, Oakland Athletics. But in that, I think that year, that 1990, because now we were like becoming like, okay, my dad's in baseball cards. He's a little bit different. And I think in that time too, like Tim Raines was on the Sox. He had just gone there, and he had two sons, Andre and Rock. So they were a little bit older. We kind of like started like, oh, this is how it, my dad's a baseball player. But yeah, that was definitely the year there that new Comiskey Park. It was a little different. But again, I think my parents made it seem so normal for us that we didn't think it was that wild of an idea.
So you talk about that 90, that 89, that era, the 1990 team. And I remember when I was on your show, we mentioned like that team was held in such high regard, but they didn't make the playoffs. Is that one of the best teams that you've ever seen to not make the playoffs?
I think they're up there. I think that's just baseball back then. It was a 90+ winning team. I think that team was just very good at what they did. They had a lot of young players that were developing themselves into later superstars, like, obviously Sammy Sosa, Frank. You got three Hall of Famers in the team. Actually 4 because Pudge. And they're just developing themselves. And I think that Jeff Torborg, was a great manager at the time, obviously for a while in the big leagues. I think it was just a special season because, again, it was just so different. Looking back now as an adult, about the juicing era and all that stuff that we know now. The White Sox were kind of like the anti-juicing team. They were little guys. They relied on speed and defense and putting the ball in play. So I think if that team plays in this era, the 90s, I think the 90s White Sox in general are in a lot more postseasons. They were good in a time when you had to win the division, like the whole thing. That's very, very hard. That Gene Lamont division, that 1993 division, it's got a little bit more merit than other divisions out there, just because that's, that was the nature of the beast. But there was a lot of good teams. I think pre-90, I was young, but I didn't really care about wins and losses when they were like rebuilding that team. When I started like really getting into it, all my teams were competitive. We were going into September looking at, the Tribune or the Sun-Times, looking at the standings on, do we have a chance of the playoffs? So for me, I grew up with a White Sox team that we were constantly on the hunt. That was just something. I never grew up with a White Sox team being a losing team. Because again, I was too young in the 80s when, from that 85 to like 1991, I was there, but I didn't really, it was more fun. I didn't really care about wins and losses.
What was one of your favorite memories from that 93 season? Because I remember that season being so magical, because I was one of I'm 11 years old. They finally win the division, to get in the playoffs. And I really thought, hey, they're going to win the World Series. And then Michael Jordan announces his retirement in game 1, and then just the air goes out of the stadium. But what's some of your favorite memories from 93?
Man, 93, the team was good in the sense that there's a lot of winning games, a lot of home runs from Frank Thomas. We had a front row seat, like I said, third row for all the home games. I remember the clinching game. My mom that day was like, we clinched tonight. She dressed us up a little bit more top notch. And we had never been to this point in a celebration. We didn't know, what would happen. So, and mind you, we're excited not knowing all the historical facts, how long it had been since they had clinched. But I know it was such a big deal for my dad that season of how focused he was on winning. Joy Cora was over the house that year. And he's very superstitious on like what he ate. But it was just a very, very focused year for them, especially for Ozzie. And he was coming off the injury. So he was coming off the 92 injury. So for him, it was even that more special because it was like a year of like, I got to get back to baseball. I got to work hard. Dad's job's on the line if he doesn't recover. So I remember opening day 93 because it was Ozzie's first, game back with the team, and the welcoming that the fans gave him, because we were at the stadium when he got hurt, which didn't look that bad when he collided with Tim Raines. But opening day and then the clinching game was just amazing. And then Toronto, when they came in, I was in awe of them. they come in. You got Alomar, Carter, very, very good team. Ricky Henderson, and the Sox played them well. I'm still mad at my parents because they didn't take us to Toronto, so we had to watch from home. We were a little pissed about that, but it was great. It was awesome. It was the only playoff world that I had ever experienced in baseball. I already had been to like 2 Bulls finals at that point my parents had taken me, but for the White Sox, I remember I wore like face paint to the game. Like that was like I think like innocence of like going to a baseball game of just being 100% a pure fan. That's the year. That's the magical year. And then obviously I thought the same was going to happen in 94 before the strike. But that year, that 93 year as a 100% authentic fan, that was my season. That's my team. Anybody ask me, I'm a 93 guy because I love that team. That's for me, when I talk about the 93 White Sox, you would think I was talking about the 05 team, just how emotionally attached I was to that team of like favorite players, stats, watching every game, every pitch, thinking everyone's going to be amazing. I watched it with through the innocence of a baseball fan.
Well, that was an amazing season. I mean, I remember I went to at least 6 or 7 games. I got a ticket. My dad scored me a ticket to game 1, so I got that. It was $40, and I had to work it off for like 3 years. I don't know how many lawns I had to mow.
It was worth it. It was worth it. Also, was the atmosphere of the stadium. I remember being like, when you're a kid, you get impressed. That was probably because they did like a different light show, like going into the game. Obviously, it was like playoff mode, so it was different. Like getting to the stadium, it was just like a whole. It was like, okay, we come here every day, but this is so much different. I remember like the celebration. People in Berwyn where we lived, they put signs in front of Ozzie's house. It was just that special. Like it was like, whoa, this is a huge deal. And again, when we won, I was like, we're going to the World Series. Like this team is unstoppable. Just because, again, I was looking at it from a world of innocence. But I remember the fans and the excitement of just that year in general. It was just like every game was like a packed house. And at the time, the stadium was just that much bigger. It had they had that top row. But I remember that year, we just whooped on everybody. We just put a beating on every single team. So from a playing standpoint, again, Ozzie coming back and that team just taking it all the way, it was just that much more special. And I think as a player, I think Ozzie's best season as far as like getting everything done that he wanted, performance on his own, team winning. For him winning was so important. Again, he was a team captain. He took a little different liking. Even if he played well, the team was losing. He always tried to keep everything separated from home and the house. But you could tell he was a lot happier when the team was winning. And he knew that team was good. And it was great because it was, you got to see young guys that grew up under Ozzie, Roberto Alomar, Roberto Hernandez, Frank, Robin, that they just, they were hitting their stride. I got to watch the best right-handed hitter maybe in the history of the game every single day. He was doing stuff that was just like in awe. Like when Frank would come up, it was like he's going deep. Like it wasn't even he's going deep or he's getting a walk. That's just what you felt, the atmosphere in the stadium every time, he stepped into the plate. And they were that good. I think that team, pound for pound, is probably one of the best Chicago White Sox teams ever assembled. Pitching staff. I always laugh when they say, oh, young pitching. How old is he? 26. I'm like, no. Young pitching, like 22-year-olds, like 21-year-olds. And obviously Wilson Alvarez was Venezuelan, so that was super cool. Getting to see him throw with the White Sox. But yeah, it was 93 is definitely a special season. And Gene Lamont, it was cool, man. Like Gene Lamont had kids, okay? So it was like Gino had kids that were our age. And then Tim Raines had kids that were our age. I don't remember who else, but then there was us. There was like a George Bell's kids were our age. We had like a basketball court. Chicken Willie had a basketball court for us in the storage room. So that if Ron Schuler came down, he wouldn't see us in the clubhouse because Ron Schuler didn't like kids in the clubhouse. So they put this back basketball court and we would play there. But we were like like a little, probably like 6 or 7 kids just running around the stadium, throughout the game, watching the game, everywhere. Go eat at the patio at the Bertucci's, get chicken, go upstairs. And it's good times because even like when Detroit would come into town, the Reigns kids were really good friends with the guy who later became a big leaguer, Prince Fielder. So that's like those times are just very cool and innocent. And it's funny because I ran around that ballpark, man. Like I own the place. We walked, moved everywhere. We knew that ballpark up and down, just because it was fun, going there and just seeing that. I'm like 14, 13 at the time. We all were in that like teenage age. It was just really cool. So a lot of great memories of just being a kid at the ballpark. That's probably the year.
All right, sorry to interject again, but let's take a quick break. We'll have more with Ozzie Guillen Jr. next on Locked On White Sox. All right, I'm on a family vacation right now and kicking myself for not using Ibotta because I need all the cash I can get to afford this trip. With Ibotta, you get cash back on all your purchases. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in this app, upload your receipts, and voila, the money is yours. And you can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you joined over the 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back. Use code LOCKEDONMLB, that's IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And the White Sox finish a 3-game home series tonight with the New York Yankees. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Shout out again to all the everydayers, the guys and gals that stick around throughout the entire show. Love the comments we have on the YouTube community. And hopefully you're enjoying this fan series that I put together as I'm on vacation. So let's jump back into my conversation with Ozzie Guillen Jr. It's funny that you bring up Prince Fielder and then like kids and that. I remember I covered Prince when he was with the Brewers, and I remember his kid came up to me, and I'm short in stature, and his kid was probably already 4 years old and was probably half my size. And he comes up to me, he's like, "Why are you so short?" And I almost wanted to be like, how do I explain winning the genetic Olympics to you? Because I think his son now is probably in the minors or something, but
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Freaks of nature. I remember Prince going deep in Tiger Stadium and being like, we're the same age. Like, that guy's like a year older than me. And Tim Raines Jr., Little Rock, who played professional too, he was older. But Prince was special. And it was good times. And it was in that time, again, you just knew, the team, the players, that the teams that had kids, and you kind of like, stayed in touch, like pen pal type of situation. But that White Sox team was really cool because as long as Ron Schuler, if Shoot came down and he didn't see anybody, he didn't care. And this is the funny part. Like, we weren't there during like batting practice and BP and not like, we'd show up after they worked out. We were never on the field, but we would go in the clubhouse, grab some. Chicken Willie was the clubhouse manager, the head guy.
He was a legend.
Yeah, he is a legend. And it was like the Sassettis were still working in the clubhouse. it was just, we knew everybody. Everybody was family. So no one really said anything. The security guards, again, different time. You know, you didn't have to have 9,000 passes to pass every single level. You just kind of knew, you waved. I remember in 93, they started this campaign. They were like recycling. Like if you recycled cups, you'd go like to this station, and they give you like gifts, like memorabilia, like bats and anything White Sox. And like for that whole year, that was like our thing. By like 93, 92, 93, 94. And after the game, we would be collecting just cups, beer cups. We're like pouring, you know, mouthwash beer from guys, probably just pouring it out. And our hands our mom's really pissed probably, but we're putting them together and we're just taking them. So we're like the cleanup crew of the stadium, just because we wanted to get as many tickets as possible. Again, innocence. I'm sure we probably could have just asked for the stuff that they were giving away and gotten it, but the collection of it made it that much more special.
All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just remember, still on vacation. So the fan series continues with part 2 of my conversation with Ozzie Guillen Jr. Feel free to leave comments about part 1. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox. Email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. The fan series continues tomorrow.